Time for bed.
But Christmas is tomorrow. I'm too excited to sleep.
Would you go to sleep if I told you a bedtime story?
Okay.
'Twas the night before Christmas, and Mommy and the kids were worried about Daddy when they heard about the bus crash on the radio. But Daddy came home safe and sound, and it was the best Christmas ever.
Yay!
However, everybody on the packed bus died, and their family spent Christmas Day identifying bodies and planning funerals.
What the fuck?
Christmas Carol Catastrophes, a podcast about the oddest Christmas songs ever unleashed on an unsuspecting public, starts November 17th.
No, really. What in the actual fuck?
Hello and welcome to Pods Like Us. I'm Martin Quibell, known to my friends as Marv, and this time I'm joined by Kevin and Chris from Digging in the Dome. Hey guys, thanks for speaking with me today.
Marv, thanks for having us.
So the show name then, where does that come from?
So
Christopher, you can take that one.
I'll roll with that one. So
Since you came up with it.
The podcast started around the pandemic, around March 2020.
Yeah.
And originally it was just me, and I called it Skullduggery, but apparently that was taken. The second episode in, and then every episode after that, I invited Kevin because doing it myself didn't feel like right. And as Kevin has pointed out many, many times, it sounded like I was like spouting a manifesto of my thoughts. It didn't work out. Like I'm much better with a co-host. So, and this guy's my best friend. So it was really easy to talk to him. So it was Skullduggery. Skullduggery was taken by another podcast. And Kevin and I have been in a band for, God, how long we were in a band? For like 15, 16 years?
Yeah, it was a decade and a half easy.
Yeah.
But we've known each other since second grade.
Yeah, we've known each other for.
We're both in our, I would say, late 40s now.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah, so we've known each other for a very long time. So the podcast, it started out as just kind of, us telling stories about being in a band and, going up and down the East Coast and, playing at places like CBGB's and trying to kind of get famous and be successful and having an indie label deal in hand, and then just falling into the classic trappings that bands fall into, sex, drugs, rock and roll, divorces, alcoholism, all those types of things. And eventually the band disbanded. And, Chris's idea was basically like dig into the minds of not only us, but eventually the people that, we came across and worked with in the past, played music with, and ultimately interviewing them and kind of getting inside their heads and talking to them. So it's not only just getting inside the madness that's within the brains of myself and Chris, but also other people that we've met along the way. For example, we had DJ Bonix on, who's Wiz Khalifa's DJ, and actually Snoop Dogg's on Snoop Dogg's.
Oh yeah, right now he's with Snoop Dogg. That's right.
So, he's a local guy. He lives about 20 minutes from where Chris and I are. The guitarist for Candlebox.
Yeah. What was the band that he was in before? Was it Octane?
He was in Octane, yeah. Right. So he was in a band that at the same time that we played together, and he ended up blowing up and, shooting the moon and becoming the lead guitar player for Candlebox. And we were stuck playing 10, 15 person rooms.
Things.
Up our noses mostly.
Yes.
But it was definitely the brainchild of Chris. I'm more of I would like to say the color commentator. If we want to use a football reference. American football, not European football.
Like, what is that
so
even?
that's
Soccer? What are you talking about?
hey, now be nice.
I'm kidding. I'm not trying to insult those. Jesus.
I'm not a fan of soccer anyway, so you can carry on.
All right.
Keep going.
Yeah.
Okay.
Soccer
Cool. Let's
stinks.
shit on soccer.
Soccer
No, I'm kidding.
stinks. I'm sorry.
I actually
get paid a shit ton of money though. God damn.
I enjoy soccer. My cousin is a very big Liverpool fan. But that's kind of how the podcast started, and we kind of do little bits, and Chris can talk a little bit more about that. Kind of the stuff that we put together that we do try to do for every podcast or every other podcast, just to kind of compete with each other / make each other laugh.
The name though, like the reason that we really got like Skullduggery, because I mean there's probably some pods that have very similar or almost exactly the same names, but I think I got at least a little bit gun shy because our band is called Desiderata, and we got a letter from a band.
Now explain what Desiderata is first.
Right, so
Desiderata is a poem.
Yes,
that it starts, "Go placidly amid the noise and hate." It is a Max Ehrheim poem.
Yes.
So one of the guys in the band came up with a name. We decided that was great. Much to our
it was a stupid thing to do because like every time people would announce it, they'd be like, they look at their name because it's Desiderata. So a bunch like a stoned MC would be like, Desperata, Desertata,
Desperado.
Desperata. It's like, oh, none of this is working well.
Desiree's Tatas.
Oh, it's it's the Adam Sandler joke, isn't it? From Click, isn't it? Oh, Mr. Abba Bubba.
Yeah, exactly.
And all that, Hubba Bubba. Where it keeps getting the person's name wrong.
That was pretty much if we played a
every
gig
that we
played. Time, there was 0%. We can go to the sound guy and be like, look, it's this. Desiderata. We would spell it out phonetically for people.
We spelled it phonetically on our first CD. We spelled it phonetically on the cover of the CD because nobody could pronounce it.
That is correct, because we wanted to make sure people understood what that. And every time anyone asks, "What's the band name?" they always say, "What was that again?" Like they don't know what we're talking about. So
anyway, it was this famous poem.
Yes.
Take it away, Chris.
Yeah. So then we got a letter from another band in like Michigan that said, of course, there's another band with the name Desiderata, and they were like, yeah, cease and desist by their lawyers to use it. So, like, I guess part of me was a bit gun shy, even though at the time, like, we just started out. I'm like, we can't use the same name as another podcast.
I thought we got a cease and desist from the family of the Ehrheim family, the guy that wrote the poem.
No,
I don't remember. I
can't remember. I thought it was another like a mariachi band that was like, we are Desiderata. You cannot be. So we ended up changing it like very slightly to Desiderata with a C, so we could actually continue to like be called that, because at that time we had been doing it for a while, and we had some kind of notoriety. And then so when we did the podcast and it was like Skullduggery was taken, I was like, I'm not going to even fuck with this. I don't need some fucking dude in like in Peru like trying to come after me with some like Day of the Dead shit. No, I'm not doing it. So we changed it to Digging in the Dome because it kind of had the same kind of thing. Skullduggery, digging into the skull, digging in the dome, kind of the same kind of concept. So that's where we landed. And why we have this lovely logo.
Cool.
There
so
it is.
Well, you've already gone to that then. Let's see that now then. So the logo. Who came up with the logo? And yeah.
I'm gonna let Kev take that one.
That was me. It's kind of designed off of I guess it would be an old gold coins, kind of pirate, type gold coins. So a friend of ours who we had on the podcast, Canvas Designs is his business. His name is Cam. He's out of California. He did the actual design for us, but I kind of mapped it out for him. I sent him a picture of the coin. I said, it's kind of digging in the dome. So we kind of went the pickaxes, kind of the skull, kind of harkening back to the skullduggery part of that Chris explained. And that was my concept. And I really kind of freehand drew it out real quick and sent it to him. And he is phenomenally talented and came up with that. And he's done logos for very famous comedians. Burt Kreischer's recent tour, the Fully Loaded tour. He did all the logo design for that entire tour. He's done stuff for Tom Segura, a bunch of other comedians, and he took it and ran with it. And props to him, because he did it incredible justice. Just coming out of my brain soup and coming up with the logo. But really, it really kind of if you look at an old gold coin that you would find in an old pirate movie, that's what it kind of looks like.
Yeah, I also like the fact that he did like iterations of it. Like, so we've got other logos. We got one that looks like Star Wars. It says "Digging the Dome." It looks like Star Wars. And so he did
a whole package for it. He's a phenomenal dude.
Awesome. Yeah, we could not recommend Cam more. He's the man. Canvas Design. Go check him out.
He's not cheap anymore either.
Oh yeah, no. Let's level set here. If you think that you're going to be, he didn't get this pro bono. We had to pay money for it, and he's way more expensive now. So we got him like yeah, but he's worth it, every penny.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely.
Yep, it's like all those musicians you keep talking about that you've chatted with. He's now famous, and you knew him before he was famous.
Yes, pretty much.
Yes, that's I mean, he was on his way. We kind of caught him on the upswing. What's that?
I said that keeps happening to us.
Yeah. Well,
other people get famous around us.
It happens to me. I've got all these guitars back here. I've played in all these bands, and most of these people have gone on to do other things, and I'm here doing a podcast.
But there you go.
There you go.
Yeah. We're doing things. We're on Roku, damn it. Everyone celebrate.
We are on Roku.
What's up?
With Pod Nation.
We are indeed.
No longer the Planet X network.
No, we've been disavowed it, even though that was a pretty cool name. I guess he got letters for cease and desist. What is this? Like some kind of plague. Like we can't get away. Whatever we're involved with, someone's got our name somewhere already copywritten, and we're getting screwed over. Even if it's not ours, we're just affiliated. So we're bad luck, I guess.
People are either getting famous or sued because of us.
Yeah. Well, famous or sued is going to be our biography. Sued. That's going to be our biography. Our joint biography. Famous
or infamous.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
We're a little bit of both.
So what inspired you then to start doing the show? Actually, before I ask that, I will say that there is something cool about when you two talk. I only mentioned it on Facebook earlier on with somebody, and I said to one of my bandmates, I said, it's something that I miss, which is, do you remember one of the weird things about when you're in a band is most of your rehearsal time has nothing at all to do with getting the songs off pat. It's all the crap that you talk about, oh, I went to see this film. Have you heard this music that's come out, this new album by such and such? It's all the chat that you miss in those rehearsals and those writing sessions. That I really miss that. And you two talking reminds me of that a lot.
Yeah. I mean, we did lots of, I guess we have technically 3 studio albums and a half a studio album that's never been finished. But like that time in the studio or rehearsing or whatever like that, it was mostly just hanging out with people that we were so like, the chemistry of that band like is definitely, and I want to separate it from Kevin and I a little bit, because Kevin and I had chemistry well before, because I've known him like my entire life. He's like legitimately like my brother, so like, that's beyond that. Like you're absolutely right. Like those times when you're just sitting around talking shit with your boys and spending all those countless hours together, and there is an element of trying to get the songs right, obviously, but a lot of that in between time when you're trying to again, you're bonding. And that's really, I think, one of those things that's a bit unsung when you're talking about bands, which is that if you don't have like personal chemistry, I don't think that you can have musical chemistry at all. Because we've brought people in, like when we had like people like kind of dip out of the band, come back in. When you're bringing somebody in to replace somebody that you have that kind of connection with, it's very, very difficult to be able to get. We had someone come in just to do like extra vocals. Do you remember that, Kevin? And
oh, yeah,
whose name I'm not going to mention.
No, we will not mention.
We were like, like it wasn't a good singer, but also like, again, it's just you're introducing kind of a a foreign individual into your into what you've already created, and it can be very challenging when you're doing that. I kind of envy bands that have the ability, to a degree, that have the ability to be able to kind of swap people out and say, I'm going to just bring this person, and they are kind of almost like it's almost seamless. We had such like good because we were an original band. Obviously, we wrote music. We got signed to a label. We had such good chemistry when we were writing music that I think that kind of translates over to how like we were able to in the band, and then even more so as people that were already really, really well connected as individuals continue that path. So it's really easy to be able to do the podcast because this is how we talk all the time.
Yeah, and it's funny too because like in the band was not only Chris and I, but two other guys in the band we also grew up with.
Yeah.
So there were four of us that had known each other since fifth grade.
Grade school. Yeah.
And so, being in a band together in our 20s, we knew who could do what. Everybody kind of had their role.
The thing.
And then as soon as that started kind of messing up, like we started to mess with that formula, that's when shit went off the rails.
Yeah.
Started adding in other people. Other people were trying to do stuff which was outside of their comfort zone or their ability zone. And that's when shit just went haywire as far as the band was concerned. With the podcast, Chris and I, we're the same on the podcast as we are in person, like
Indeed.
without a doubt. And so that it makes it kind of easy because we're not trying to be something that we're not. Like the way that we are personality wise, the things that we say, the things that we do is exactly how we would be if you met us in person on the street. It's not rehearsed. Rarely do I ever bring anything written to the podcast, unless it's something where we're actually trying to pick a draft, do a draft of the our favorite things about fall, or our least favorite wrestlers of all time, shit like that, where it does take a little bit of research. Outside of that, what you see is what you get when it comes to the two of us, which is pretty great.
Yep.
But I remember that, staying on that for a little bit, because, it's very rare that I get to talk to people who, have been in the music business, same as me. So, and been in bands. Another thing that I used to do a lot was when we used to be in the studio, for instance, and there'd be a bit of tension and you'd be trying to nail the part or whatever. And then sometimes, people might get a bit tetchy with each other and a bit, have problems with each other or whatever. I used to have this thing where I'd be like, do you know what? I'd turn to the engineer in the studio and I'd just say, right, we're just going to have an early break here. Okay. And then I'll say to the others, come on, let's get away from this for a bit. Let's go somewhere, have a drink, have something to eat, just us time, catch up, just talk about anything. And then when it's calmed down a bit, because you'll find that going back into that, the friendship that you've got, that the band's built on originally anyway, I always found that then we'd do that. And then you'll get to that sort of like, you've calmed down, you go back into the studio and you hit it straight away like that. You've got what's needed there because that tension's been pulled away. And the fact that if you're in a band like that, it's easier because you know how to be with each other and how to get the best out of each other as well, because you've got that background.
Yeah, I would agree that. Like, I think that I didn't really, I don't know, Kev, you feel different. I don't feel like when we were in the studio that there was a tremendous amount of tension there. Like, we did have our moments in practice and stuff.
The studio was never the problem. It was
always at shows or something like that.
It was always the shows of practice. Live shows of practice was always the problem. Studio was always on point. Like, really never kind of had any disagreements with arrangements or any sort of backlash with, people not pulling weight or right. Any disagreements in the studio. It was always practice, or the decision making outside of, outside of practice or the studio that was really the problem. There was just people that were really good from a chemistry perspective musically, but then people that were not so good from a chemistry level personally. And that's really where kind of the rubber hit the road with us, and shit kind of went off the rails.
Yeah, I think that like the good news of all of that is that through the tough part of like, having like a kind of a breakup. What happened to you? Did you get
my lights went out. I'm trying to turn it back on.
Kevin went dark. And
my lights went
He's
went
gone
out.
to the dark side.
Yeah.
There
my
he
lights
is.
went out behind me, so I just
He
had
back.
to turn them back on. I used up all the solar power.
I thought maybe like one of our ex bandmates like did like a Rambo'd you, like came up.
It is around Halloween time. Like if I just see me get, and I'm sitting outside right now, so if I get,
I know. That's what I'm saying. Like, you're literally prone for injury. At least I've got an alibi. I'm here. Yeah, there's no. I'm not. It's not the fucking Prestige. I don't have like a twin. So I.
The Prestige.
So I think that like Kevin's points were spot on, where it's like, we had our moments in the band where, like, again, personal tensions, I would think, are kind of like more people that had that kind of there was a lot of ego. Obviously there's always a lot of ego in bands, and I think the good news from all of that is that at the end of the day, we are all still really good friends. Like Kevin and I are way closer than the rest of the people, but like because we're doing the podcast,
we're doing stuff together.
Yeah. And so those other guys like have gone like on to quote unquote retire from the entertainment industry and go and like live normal people lives, like for the most part. A couple people do some things here and there. I think our drummer Anthony, who is, I gotta say, maybe the best drummer I've ever played with, maybe the best drummer I've ever seen. Like he's just incredibly talented. Definitely the most talented person in our band by far.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I'm sure he's still doing things and like stuff like that. We keep in touch, but and that's really all you want at the end of the day. We even if we didn't, because how many, like, it's a 1 in a million chance that you're going to make it as a musician, because there's so many of them out there. And the fact that we could have a band that had the success that we had, be able to play at the cool places, like Kevin mentioned, we played at CBGB's. We played there 4 times. In a CBGB's book, our sticker is like kind of front and center in this one picture. It's super cool, right? Like being able to play in an iconic place like that, and just again being able to have the experiences that we did, I think really, and then being able to do that, have the kind of breakup we did, get back together, and then kind of end as friends, I think was for me like maybe the most rewarding part of all that. And obviously from that, to a degree, was born a pretty successful podcast. So that's cool too.
It's cool. It's a cool podcast. So You've gone into show history, and have you described the show as well? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like Kevin kind of hit it. Like we do interviews with people for sure. Yep. Right. Like that's something that, and we've not done as many as we should have been doing lately, just because we haven't had, we've just been talking a lot, like about a lot of things. There's a lot going on in our lives that we are just kind of, staying connected on. So we'll get back to probably doing.
We both have actual corporate jobs too,
yes,
which and families as well. So it makes, and we, produce, and I'll give Chris all the credit. He does all the back end production of the podcast. But sometimes it's hard just getting together every other week to record, because of our schedules. It's one of those things where, doing an interview here and there, helps kind of break up those moments when maybe Chris and I can't get together, to record a full podcast. We'll bring somebody in to talk to them. But it's also the fact that, the podcast is digging in the dome. We do want to, get into the minds of the people that, were around. Chris is starting to get into the stand-up comedy world. I'm meeting people in that regard too. So, we want to start interviewing people in that world as well, and trying to convince other people that we've run across in the past to come on the podcast and talk. People that we haven't yet gotten famous enough on our podcast to have on. That they're willing to come on.
Kevin and I joke that we always have like the janitor's uncle, like the uncle's janitor of the person of like Bruce Willis. It's like, it's never like Bruce Willis. It's always like some tertiary character in Bruce's life that we end up being able to score. But like we interviewed Colin Jost's brother, Casey, who is actually in his own right kind of famous because he is in the Impractical Jokers universe. He's been in the movies and TV. He's a writer for them. But it's like there's Colin Jost, who is ridiculously famous, and he's married to Scarlett
Johansson.
Yeah. And then there's Casey, who is
and he has not yet agreed to come on our podcast, surprisingly.
Yes. Well, one can hope one day, someday we'll get him. But besides like the interviews, which I think is definitely a part of it, part of the way that at least my mind worked when was conceiving this idea was like, I came from college radio. So I'm used to structure. I also have some OCD. So also structure, very important to me, like having segments and stuff like that we do that we can kind of go back to. And I think that there is value to brand in those kinds of segments. So we have, it's not like a lot of the things that we're doing, I would say are pretty, I want to say standard, but there are things that other people, most of the segments that we're doing have been done in some way, shape, or form. It's just like, to a degree, like comedy, when you hear things like, it's like, okay, I've heard that theme before, but how do you make it yours? So we do things like we take headlines and we kind of like joke about what it's like clickbait headlines. We joke about what the article could be about. We've been like living off of Spout Off, which is this newspaper newspaper piece that we basically, it's based about where we came up. We came up in Cape May, New Jersey, and there is this newspaper called the Herald, and in the back of it, there's this thing called Spout Off, and all Spout Off is a bunch of it's like paper Twitter. They're just, but without names. So it's like, well, sort of like Twitter, I guess, or X. It's just they're saying like, one of the ones was, does anyone know where I can find some good potato salad? And that's it. Avalon. It was just like, what? So we like look at those kinds of things and just kind of make fun of them. We break down videos. We kind of post scenarios to each other. We have our drafts that we do all the time. And we also have this thing called
I was going to say the topic randomizer we haven't done in a very long time.
I'm going to bring it back.
But one of my favorite segments that came out of the topic randomizer is defend your conspiracy theory.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, it's a good one.
What we did was we took a conspiracy theory and we made the other host defend that as if they actually believed in that particular conspiracy theory.
Which way?
It's one of my favorite segments that we've ever done.
We did the one we did. There's Flat Earth.
Yeah,
right. Was one. What was the other one on that same one? It was Flat Earth, and then the faking the moon landing.
Faking the moon landing. What was the one where the guy that was defending it did a movie with Kevin Sorbo and he had the same last name as you?
Climate Hustle.
Climate Hustle. That's it. It was climate change.
You were defending that global warming isn't a thing. And I think the one was I think I had to defend that one, I think.
No, you gave it to me. I
gave it to you. That's right. And then you made me defend that Epstein wasn't a suicide or something, or Epstein was a suicide. So
I believe that was also me.
Oh, was you? Okay. So wait, what were mine? Then mine had moon landing and
Flat Earth.
And Flat Earth. That's right. Flat Earth. Yeah. You're right. Flat Earth was mine too. So basically we just the podcast really is a series of battles between Kevin and I and ways to find ways to embarrass each other, make us look stupid. We just did a scenario where because Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift are so like blowing up the internet now. So the scenario was, and Kevin came up with it, that basically you have to choose your co-host's celebrity relationship. And
the one that's gonna just blow the roof off the internet.
Right. And so Kevin and I have a pretty, I think it's a kind of ritualistic, but it's also the way that we keep things fair is in who's going to go first. Right. So we flip a coin to see who goes first. And so there's a good chance that I might choose something of Kevin's or Kevin might choose something of mine if that was something that was. So Kevin unfortunately lost that one the last time. And I got to choose his celebrity crush that was going to be his girlfriend. And that was Britney Spears.
And we both had chosen Britney Spears, and this was shortly after she posted a very insane video of her dancing with knives and smacking them off of her swimsuited
yes.
bottom, and it very insanely. So we happened to both choose that, so I had to choose someone else, and I believe I chose Jada Pinkett Smith for you.
Yes, you did, you son of a bitch. That wasn't good for me. Great, I'm getting cucked by the pool boy. Thanks for that.
Exactly.
That's two very topical subjects right there this past week, isn't it? Britney Spears and the Will Smith's family.
Yeah. Yep.
We try to stay topical on that stuff too.
Yeah, we're not sure how much of our bullshit makes it over to the pond, over the pond to you guys. But we our fan base is weird because we have a really strong listening base in New Zealand.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, and you're not the first person from England that has connected with us on this podcast. So it's strange because we don't really talk about, we talk about current affairs, but not in the capacity of serious conversations. We'll break down a video of Joe Biden falling off a bike, or who was the guy that just froze solid twice?
Mitch McConnell. He got freeze framed. Yeah,
yeah, who just literally just stopped talking in the middle of an interview.
Wow.
So we talk about that type of stuff, but
we also have we broke down videos of the dude that was at the town hall that was arguing that you can't call boneless wings boneless wings. Remember that guy?
Oh yeah, because it's not actually bone. They're not actually.
There's no
wings.
bones in them, so he was unhappy that you were calling them wings. He said you can call them saucy nugs or trash.
Or trash.
Here, I've given you a plate of trash. Do you want some? Do you want some sauce with that?
Yeah, apparently there. Well, he was not a big fan of that. But yeah, we'll find just random weird shit. One of I think I'm pretty sure, Kevin, that it's maybe our most popular episode. We're somewhere close to 70 or 80,000 views on it. On YouTube. And it was the one where we broke down the rap battle of Top That Teen.
Oh man.
Teen Witch, or whatever it was called.
What was that movie? Teen Witch? Was it Teen
Witch? I think it was called. Yes, it's an 80s movie, and it's just terrible.
We're gonna on the next podcast. We'll let you in on inside of this one. We're gonna break down another. I can't remember if it was 80s or early 90s. It might be early 90s. There's a movie called My Boyfriend's Back, where it's Halloween time. It's spooky season. So the movie is about a girl's boyfriend who is killed and comes back from the dead as a zombie, and she continues to date him as a zombie, and how it's a dog shit movie, and I cannot wait to discuss it on the podcast with Chris.
Yeah, it's
that's going to be our little
Dead.
Halloween break. Yeah, it's pretty horrible.
That's a good point, though, Kev. One of the things that we do fairly regularly is we like to do very topical things based on the season. So we just got done doing the best things about the fall. That was one thing that we do. We do a lot of Halloween stuff. A couple years ago for Thanksgiving, I surreptitiously recorded my family on a Zoom call. It was during COVID. And basically took that, we clipped it and made fun of it. And it was really funny, dude. It just because they didn't know that they were being recorded, and I kind of told them after the fact. But it was it's just funny because you just get really raw like family stuff out there, and it was just like there's a bunch of characters in my family anyway. So but we do things like that. We do like Christmas drafts, we do New Year's stuff. Like it's just whatever the time of year is, we try to like kind of stay with the season and stuff like that.
Yeah, so like Halloween, I think last year we did like the worst horror movie deaths. Like the deaths that and then we've done the one so there were like the most ridiculous. Like that hilarious one with Mama Fratelli's head exploding from a basketball.
She got hit with a basketball from a robot.
And her head exploded. So just stuff like that. Listen, I hate to jump. I have to run.
You're fine. I can take it from here.
So Chris can carry
and the baton.
The rest. I'm sure he will surreptitiously talk shit on me.
No.
Thank you so much for having us on here. I appreciate it. You're in good hands with Chris. And I appreciate you reaching out to us. Look forward to talking to you again real soon, Marv. Okay. Thanks again for reaching out to me on Instagram too. I very much appreciate it. So we'll talk soon.
We will.
Bye.
All right. Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks, gents.
Bye,
talk
Kev.
to you soon. Bye.
And like that, he's gone. Look at that. He's going to rob a place. Do you see him? He's wearing black. He's in his dark. That's what he's doing. He's going to go.
He's going to go and get his hoodie.
Child. Yeah, he's got a young child, so I'm sure that probably has something to do with it. So Kev, so he said we're in late 40s. I've got 2 kids. I'm not sure if you've got kids, Marv. Do you have kids?
Lots of nieces and nephews, but no kids. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I've got 2. They're in their they're 2 teenage daughters. So I'm constantly fighting the urge to flee and change my identity, but have not done so yet. Kevin just had his first kid like almost 2 years ago.
Okay.
So he's just getting it. So he literally is at the very beginning of the ride. I'm like further along down the track. So every once in a while he's got to dip because he's got to go take care of that Bambino, my godson, Bodie.
Well, I mean, when they're younger, they need more attention. So, but when they're older, they don't want you anywhere near them.
That is pretty much the score. Yeah. Leave me alone. Close my door. Give me money. That's usually the sequence of things that happens.
Well, we won't bother going into the draft that I started writing out. Then I was going to do a draft thing where I was going to list all these things, but we'll come to that some other time.
Yeah, you have a draft for what? Tell me. Talk to me about it.
I was starting to write out sort of Halloween-based films, and I was going to get you to select them, and then at the end you work out which one is the standout from all of them.
Standout for all of them. Yeah. So do you have specific movies? Kevin, I'm sure can chime in on our next podcast, but we can certainly try to take a crack at it if you want and discuss them. What do you have in terms of the movies?
I hate to say it, I'd only just started writing them out.
Okay. Now, what kind of movies are these? Are your favorite Halloween movies, your least favorite? Because there's always some kind of when we're doing a draft, there's always some kind of an edge to it. Right. Like you said.
I was just writing general titles out, really.
Okay.
I need to put more thought to it, and then I'll send it in as a draft.
Fair enough. Yeah, bring it in because we are always looking for more things to draft, and obviously, with the seasons and stuff like that. But we've done so many different kinds of drafts. We do, he mentioned like the funniest, most ridiculous Halloween-based or horror movie-based deaths. The things that we hate about Easter is always a good one. That we've done that one before. We just talked about the things that we love about fall because I think, and I don't know weather-wise what it's like in your neck of the woods, but we get the seasons around here. So we get, the summer is very, very hot. The winter is very, very cold. And then you got the spring that can be, kind of in the middle. And then the fall, which in my estimation is the best in terms of how comfortable and wonderful it is.
It's very cold outside. I will say that here.
Mm-hmm.
But if I say the temperature, most Americans would be, what's that? Because we use centigrade or Celsius in the UK, don't we?
So drop a Celsius, I'm like, it's 0 degrees. I'm like, oh God.
It's 3 degrees outside. So centigrade, yeah.
Oh yeah, that's cold.
That's
very
cold. It's called.
Yeah.
And I think there's a fog which people would expect in England.
Yes, fog is what you are known for. That is definitely something that London fog.
That's right.
I believe that might be
pea soup, as they called it.
Yes, indeed. So is it very foggy there all the time, Marv?
Not all the time, no. Just when it gets colder. Which essentially, I mean, fog. We're going all into weather here, aren't we? Essentially, fog is just moisture that's on the ground that's risen up, and that's what it is, really. That's in the air.
Exactly.
That's all. Fog is. Yeah,
that's all it is. I haven't the foggiest. See, we keep it light around here.
You ought to talk to Graham Class. He could probably use that joke on the Daily Dads podcast.
Well, Kevin did mention that I just started doing stand-up about 7 months ago. So I've been doing it pretty regularly every single week, 2 or 3 times a week.
Hey, this is Brian with Concerts That Made Us podcast, and you're listening to Pods Like Us, a great show about other great shows.
Have you heard, talking about stand-up, have you heard the rumour that Seinfeld and Larry are looking at, they said something about, they've not said it's a definite, but they're working on something.
Like a reunion thing for Seinfeld?
I think they're doing a Seinfeld, thing.
I mean, so here, I have mixed emotions about something like that, because it's just like, and I feel this way about most things that are kind of iconic. It's one of the things that kind of annoys me about entertainment these days, which is you can't really come up with original ideas any longer.
Yep.
Like, you're just recycling pretty much everything that's already been done. So they just do like a litany of different remakes. And it's almost to a degree I realize that there is a hypocrisy in what I'm saying, because if you think about Bram Stoker's Dracula that starred Gary Oldman and Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder, like that was, a movie that was based off of Nosferatu and like early movies in the 20s, like maybe the most, Boris Karloff, like very, very old movies. And so me saying, well, they're not coming up with anything original, is kind of born out of some level of hypocrisy. But I think it's the same thing with really anything from an entertainment perspective. They just kind of retread these ideas or take a movie that was already iconic. So I think about Seinfeld and say, well, the ending, I think people would say, was probably not what they expected and perfect.
Yep.
The show was the show. So the danger is that you bring it back and it ends up being terrible. And then it kind of sullies what you did previously. It's like, why don't you just leave it alone? Have you seen the new Frasier? You know what Frasier is, right?
Oh, yep. We saw the first episode. We're yet to watch the second one that's come out, but we did not like the first episode.
It's not very good.
No.
Again, you're taking something that for the at the time, that show was fantastic. The cast was well done. And most of the cast I don't think came back. So that definitely had an impact on it. And it's like a different story. It's not the same kind of chemistry, talk about bands. It's not the same chemistry. You're bringing other elements that don't really make sense to the story. And Frasier in and of itself was a risk because they took that from Cheers.
Yeah.
The show Cheers, like you took a character from Cheers and said, I'm going to spin it off there. That could have been a terrible, because we've seen it happen. They actually took other characters from Cheers. Carla and her husband, Eddie, they tried to make a show out of that and it bombed. It was terrible. But Frasier ended up being very successful. So then he's like, okay, but Hollywood, they do those kinds of things and say, let's try to get more out of this. The one person, and I'll give, and this is a comedian that I absolutely love and I think is brilliant, English comedian that did it right, is Ricky Gervais. He did The Office, and he just did a David Brent movie, 4 or 5 years ago, that is hilarious.
Yeah.
So good.
But you find that as well with somebody like, Sacha Baron Cohen, who will only do one season of Ali G. Then there's a film of it. That's it. I'm on to the next character now. I'm on to Borat. And then that's done with. And then I'm on to the next character. And he's constantly reinventing because he's trying something new. And that's the same with Ricky Gervais, where he just does 1 or 2 seasons, like that one where he sees Ghost. That's just 1 or 2 seasons, and then that's it, done. 2 seasons, it's over with.
And that's the thing. It's like when you like, if you've captured that lightning in a bottle, and you've got that right formula for people to really enjoy what you're doing. Again, it's the but I think that we could do it again kind of mentality that becomes really challenging. They're talking about doing another. I'm not sure if it's a movie. I believe it's like continuing a series for the American Office, and the American Office was a risk because so many people love the British Office and say you can't mess with that. So good. How can you possibly think that you can replicate that? And they were able to do it again differently, but have similar tropes inside of the American Office and made that really good for a long time. So now they're saying, okay, we're going to do it again. You might get Frasiered, you know?
Yep. Well, they might get Joey'd.
Or they might get Joey.
With Friends, because that did not work. The spin-off for Joey did not work. But then the problem that they had there with that one is the fact that they basically copied verbatim exactly the idea of Friends, but essentially put Joey there with a load of other friends.
Right. It's like, all right, we're going to replace everybody else that you loved with people that you don't know, and this one character that you like. It's like, probably not going to work. And I get it. Like, look, obviously we are living in a world that is absolutely starved for content. Yeah. So because you have so many different streaming services and medium that like you have to be able to fill that stuff up. And so these guys are probably like, we got to figure out something. And so the easy thing to do is to say, well, I can hang my hat on somebody that I at least know that has been liked previously, or a concept that's been done before that might be something that people want to revisit, or, a group of people like Seinfeld. So that's for me, that's the risk. And so the only thing that gives me a little bit of pause to say it might be great is because it's Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld doing it.
Yeah.
And Larry David's already proven that he can go, and Curb Your Enthusiasm it probably is funnier than Seinfeld ever was. It's hilarious.
But I mean, I think that in some ways, as much as I love what I've seen of Seinfeld, I've not seen it all. I've recently started to do a rewatch so I can catch all of them, really. Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of the bits that stand out to me, I'm assuming, are the Larry David bits in the writing, because to me, when I see the character George is absolutely Larry David.
100%. Yes. Absolutely. 100%. And that's the thing. Like, so and again, you think about the character that maybe most remember, like Jerry is somewhat the anchor in that because he's the star, he's the comedian that, they're like this guy that's kind of coming up in the ranks and building his career and going on the Tonight Show and doing all this stuff. Getting a pilot with NBC with George, of course, like those are things that I think, again, you kind of filter, but the characters around them are really the more interesting part, and particularly George, because he is just he does things just so self-serving. And again, you look at Larry David, that's very much the way that he is in Curb. And you hear that's really who he is. Like, that's the guy. He's building it off of his own characters. His character's so quirky in life that he's able to make it a little bit hyperbolic, and then, deliver it to everybody, and everybody loves it consistently. Everyone's always loved it.
But essentially, George and Kramer as well are different aspects of Larry David, but but Larry's not exactly the same as them. The sort of those aspects of Larry David to a real extreme.
Exaggerated. There are these exaggerated like traits of him. So it's an amalgamation of all these things. And to a degree, Larry David was a stand-up comic. He wasn't successful at it. Like, I mean, like as successful as he is as a writer and a producer or anything like that. But he was a stand-up comic. So again, Jerry is in there, right? Like there's all those pieces that's like kind of again, like these different personality traits, to your point, that have been kind of carved out of him and made to be like, this is who he is. Was that movie Inside Out, where all those emotions are in your head and they're all different people. That's kind of like what Seinfeld is. It's just all those different things are characters in Larry David's brain.
So personally, if they do something with that, like you said, I'm looking forward to them being able to do that, because the fact that not only have you got those two together working, but also the fact that, as we were saying with bands, yourself in band that you've been in, and then band that I've been in as well, there's something good about the fact that they've kept the relationships with all of the main cast members as well, because you've seen that over the years where Michael, who plays Kramer, you'll see them catching up with each other all over the place, and Julia Louis-Dreyfus, she's all over with them, and all these people are still in each other's, bubbles.
Indeed. Yeah. And I think that it can go really one of two ways. And you see bands do it all the time, which is, there are those contentious things and again, there's always going to be like friction. That's the nature of creativity, is that there's always going to be friction. There's going to be disagreements about things, whatever. And music in particular, because you definitely have a specific kind of way of seeing how things should kind of go together. Right. And, or you have a concept of something that maybe somebody's not going to love. And that's okay. Like, again, all okay, as long as when you're done, you put it behind you and say, this is all part of that creative process and not necessarily personal things. And so when those things become, and I think in particularly when individuals try to rise above what the actual collective has done together, is when things get hairy. It's like, well, you're saying that you don't, you're saying that you don't want to do this or you don't want to do that. And you get that kind of like egotistical thing. It's like, all right, we're trying to operate as a group of peers. And if you start to have this one person that's trying to now be I'm going to be the leader of this thing and I'm going to direct the traffic, it can get nasty.
But so long as they, we're going to move on this subject really quickly soon. Yep. But just to sort of finish it off in a way, from my point of view, so long as they don't over egg it, in a sense, because I think if they do too much of it, it might sour what's been there before. So long as they know we'll do this amount to it, and then we'll leave it there, in a sense. Yeah,
100%. I agree with that. I think that, again, they're having opinion and again, that's where you like really do have to set the table of, this is an even playing field with all of us. Like we should be all working together to create something, and everyone's idea, whether it gets used or not, everyone's like, hey, maybe we should do a change here, or add this kind of sound here, or whatever it is, like add this, triangle might sound good here, like whatever, like those things all have their place. And when it comes down to it, if you have a good enough relationship and an honest enough relationship with your bandmates, you could say, you know what, I appreciate that, but doesn't seem to fit. And then it's, again, the consensus. Does everyone agree with that? And you have to be okay with saying, my idea can get shot down. It doesn't mean I'm not a good musician. Yep. Doesn't mean these guys don't like me. It just means that particular one did not land.
That's right. Yep. So get your list back again, Martin, of questions.
All right.
So what have we got? So record it. Crikey, we're only at point number 4. So recording and editing then. How do you do that?
That's all me. So again, I've got some background in doing video and audio editing before. Coming from music background, that actually helped because operating in the studio and working on that kind of stuff with the engineers definitely assisted in that. I worked at one of my corporate jobs. I did a business podcast there, so I'd already had production experience doing that. I've created content for pretty much my entire life in some way, shape, or form. So what I did was I literally picked myself up by my bootstraps and figured it out. Like I got the right kind of programming. I got the right kind of equipment. I started with USB mics and then moved to XLRs with an audio interface, and, kind of like along it got the same thing, right? I over time just kind of got all the things that I needed. I got, I edit with Premiere and Audition. I do a lot in After Effects to kind of give it some pizzazz. We try to do, I really wanted to make sure that when I was putting something out, that it was something that I would be like, wow, that's really cool if I did it, So the things that you see, that's all stuff that has been developed by me using, the tools that were provided to me by really Adobe. So shout out Adobe. They've been a really good partner, and just learning through YouTube. So, it is I'm sure it's an exhausting process. It can be a difficult process to go through that, but it really is once you get good at it, it is actually kind of fun to put this kind of stuff together.
Yeah. So how does the editing go about then? Is there a lot of it, or do you just do minimal?
Well, I mean, because there's production involved in it, like meaning like if we're breaking down a video, we're watching the video. I've got a flat screen TV up against the wall, so we're watching it. So I already have it kind of pre-recorded, that clip, whatever we're watching, and then I have to kind of like basically take the because we have a 2-camera shoot. We've got a front-facing camera here, and then we have a camera over here that's pointing at Kevin's chair.
Yeah.
So I have to take those two pieces and kind of mold them together. So the 2 shots that you see in our podcast are camera 1 and camera 2, essentially. And then so like when we're doing that, I put it together, and then I have to like actually have, because the viewer has to see that what we're looking at too. So I had to put the clip in there and then stop it at the right places. And, so there is especially when we're doing things like breakdowns, those tend to take longer just because I'm now like pulling in the video for that. Or we do a lot of, because we make a lot of references to like pop culture. So I'll pop in like a Simpsons reference or a Futurama reference or, an old movie reference or something like that, and just drop that clip in there just like for 2 seconds, just to give people that visual aid as well as the audio aid. So it could take time. I mean, I've got a better computer now, so the editing or the processing timing is way down. Used to take a long time, and now it's taking like 20 or 30 minutes. So that's
brilliant.
Yes.
Yeah. I used to take hours and hours and days sometimes doing edits, and now, wow, I'm glad I don't take that long now.
Well, it's the editing part of it, like the actual constructing it, takes probably more time. It takes me at least a day. And it really depends. If we're doing like a straight up interview like we're doing right now, it's super easy because I don't really have to interject anything. We're just talking. When we're doing our like basically what I would call our segments, we're doing headlines. I have to pop the headline up. If we're doing a scenario, might put some visual aid in there. If we're doing topic randomizer, it depends on what the wheel lands on. The topic randomizer is again, kind of a brainchild of mine. I just basically created it's not really, it's technically a wheel now, but it didn't used to be a wheel. It used to be a spreadsheet that I had a formula that randomized what you would land on. So we had these topics that you would have, and then they always end up, I don't know. I feel like I have a cursed spreadsheet because it just drags up all these horrible memories from our childhood or something that we don't want to talk about or something super embarrassing. But they always end up being entertaining for the fans. So I guess it's worth it at the end.
So, structure and topic choices then. What sort of structure is there? And I'm guessing the structure is different according to whether it's an interview or chat with somebody else to a normal show. And how do you choose what topics that you talk about?
So like interviews, to your point, I think the key there is, and you did a really nice job of getting background on us, like getting background on the subject, like understanding it, being genuinely interested in and wanting to learn, be curious about their process, understand what got them into what they're doing. Again, it makes it easier when you've got corollaries with that individual. So we have the commonality of being in bands. Like, so we could talk about music for hours probably, right? And not get bored about it. And we could talk about like your experiences in playing music and where your favorite place to play is and what was your worst gig and things like that will come up. Right. So interviews are really kind of straightforward. The second part of that, I would say, when we're doing what I would call a standard show, is more about like, he and I will just text each other and say, okay, what kind of a scenario do we want to do this week? And one of us will pop off and say, let's do this one. Hey, the one we did a couple of weeks ago was, one of your family members has passed away and you have to go and clean their house out. What is the one thing you don't want to find? So that led to some very, very funny conversation about what you really wouldn't want to find in someone's house. So it's like that kind of thing. And then like breaking down videos, it's the same thing. We like find a clip. We're like, this is ridiculous. We should probably talk about this. Topic randomizer is what it lands on. So now the topic randomizer went from a cursed spreadsheet to a cursed wheel, and you just spin the wheel and whatever it lands on, you have to do it, whatever it is. So that's kind of like a self, that kind of structures itself to a degree. And then drafts, it's the same thing. We just kind of talk about hey, what do you want to draft this week? And then we'll just then come up with what we think are the right draft picks, and then we battle in that and see who wins.
So you've got a real wheel of misfortune.
You're not kidding, man. It maybe one of the worst things, and we just actually referenced it. We just released, because we do our we always exclusive to Roku first. We always premiere on Roku first, and then we release it a few days later out to the rest of the world. But we're just talking about the time that we landed on I Double Dog Dare You was one of the things that was on the wheel. And Kevin double dog dared us to eat the one chip, that super, super hot chip. Have you ever heard of that thing before?
Yeah.
You ever eaten it before?
No.
Don't do it.
No.
Never do it.
No.
So stupid Kevin, and I can call him stupid because he's not here, and I would say he was stupid if he was here, was like, let's eat it at the beginning of the podcast as opposed to at the end. And actually, I'll give him credit. Comically, it was pretty brilliant, because the entire episode was us just struggling through, trying not to die from that stupid hot chip. It was horrible. So yeah, it is a wheel of misfortune for sure. My family has gotten mad at me more than one time for stories that have come out because of that freaking wheel. Yeah. If you ever see the top, I'll send you this. We always have like kind of a segue stinger into our thing, or whatever segment we're doing. And the topic randomizer definitely has that feeling of dread when you hear it, because that's what it is. It is definitely all bad. It's just going to make you do things you don't want to do.
Dear me. So you've already mentioned how you choose the guest. Then what we got next? Music and logo, music for everything. Where does all that come from?
So the logo we talked about, we got Cam from Canvas Design to put that together based on some concepts that Kevin talked about. The music, actually, interestingly, is from our band, Desiderata. Cool. I took maybe definitely our most popular song called Medicine. And basically I took it and kind of remixed it into what it is for the theme. And obviously I put together like the visual behind it too. So that we constantly get a lot of feedback about how cool the opening is to our podcast. Everyone really, really digs how we put that together. It's kind of got like this like kind of very ominous, very start to it. And it's got this very almost disembodied voice kind of saying, if you get inside of my head, and it kind of echoes out. Like that's kind of like, again, it's all music from our album that's on iTunes. So super cool that we were able to take that, repurpose it, and then put that together out there. It wasn't always like that. I think like 2 or 3 years ago is when I put that opening together.
I mean, my music's my own as well. They're just little bits of music that I've had lying around that I just thought, that sounds cool for a podcast. Pop that at the beginning and pop this at the end. That's the music.
That's it. Right on. And again, it's one of those things that if it's catchy, if it's, and it's yours too, which is mostly important. The podcast is about you as much as it's about the people that you're talking to. Right.
Yep. And then I don't get any problems either from anybody having to pay anybody to do the music.
Yeah, exactly right. Isn't it nice being a musician? So cool.
It is cool. Having all the instruments behind me to do it with.
Oh, yeah. You can just do whatever you want.
Then the keyboard's underneath the laptop right now. So,
there you go. So you've got it all right in your studio. And it's amazing too. It's like one of the interesting things that I find about talking to podcasters and or musicians, like everybody that we're talking to always has like this kind of equipment just lying around next to them. They're in their own little studio. My studio is, for all intents and purposes, my man cave. This is where I live, in this room. And I have the most fun in this room. Certainly not the bedroom anymore. I've been married for 20 years. Hey,
man.
Hey, it's Gil from the Mind Podcast. Today's mind culture and social podcast. And you're listening to Pods Like Us.
Those things there that I'm pointing to, they're actual didgeridoos.
Didgeridoos. I was about to say they looked like, I was going to ask. It was either that or they were like you like were a karate expert. You had like those bow staffs. You're like,
Yeah, it's two didgeridoos, two Australian didgeridoos there.
that's incredible.
And
That's awesome.
And then I've got the tamboura and the sitar in the corner that you can't see as well.
Yeah, you got a whole thing there, man. That's great. I remember looking. So Brian Quinn, the guitarist that Kevin was referencing before, the guy from Candlebox, he did his interview via Zoom in his studio, and he just had walls of guitars. Like if you go back and see it, the Brian Quinn interview. I was just like, basically the entire time I was barely able to talk. So I was like, I just want to play all those guitars. Like there were so many cool guitars in there.
I've not got that many.
No, you've got it, but that's still, I'm sure there are probably, you got pretty good. What's your favorite guitar?
My favorite is the Telecaster.
Yeah. All right.
And
SG's.
Then my second favorite is I've got an Ibanez Art Core, which is similar to an old 335.
Yeah. Ooh, I do like an Ibanez.
So the idea is that I mean I'm going really into the things here. This is going to bore some people that don't know anything about music, but
that's right. Hey, wait, learn something, you loser.
But I like the Telecaster I'll use for the really distorted bits, because there's something about a Telecaster where no matter what you do, you can do really dirty chords.
Oh yeah.
But they still sound great.
Yep.
So it's really good for dirty, distorted chords. Whereas the Art Core, that's like a 335, that's gorgeous for like if you want to do like a funky, clean, sort of rhythm side of the pickups on that on the rhythm setting for a nice like I said, like a funk chord or something. If you want that, or if you want to do a jazz chord, so you got the different guitars for the different tones.
And I think that's where, like, again, when you start getting super nerdy and you could really get into it could be a financial burden if you're not careful. You could be like, I want a guitar for pretty much every flavor that I want. You know what I mean? It's actually one of the things that I like about, and it really is about the guitar. Like a lot of people say, oh, you can use processors and things like that. I mean, it's not the same.
No. It's
the guitar that matters. It really is.
But, and bass wise, I can't decide between the what have I got? I've got a 5-string precision and a 4-string jazz. Ooh. And I can never pick one over the other. It depends on what it's going to be playing, whatever song it fits.
It's nice to have options.
It is. Yeah, the Steinberger hasn't been played for about 30 years.
No, it's been sitting on the shelf, huh?
No, that's been sat on the shelf, because who plays one of those nowadays? Those stick bass things, the old Steinberger bass.
Yeah, nobody does that really.
Quintessential on most music videos in the 1980s. One of those.
Oh my God, you see them everywhere.
You do, and they cost a fortune.
Oh yeah, forget it. So I'm saying it could be a real financial burden if you're not careful. You could spend all your money on guitars.
Didn't cost me that much when I bought it back in the early 90s, I'll assure you.
That's the beautiful thing, is like when you have the guitars, you don't have to worry about going and buying more and you don't want to. You can just like be like, okay, because you go out now, it's like, whoa, how much you say that was?
Yep, I think it cost me £300, I think, in the early 90s. Yes. And now you look online, they're about between $1.5 to $2,000 or something, one of those.
Oh yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like that's it. Like, all right, yeah, well, I'm not buying that. I can swing the $300 to $400. I don't know about the $2,500, $3,800. You go into Guitar Center or Sam Ash or something like that around here. It's like you see some of these guitars, you're like, wow, this sounds beautiful, but I cannot buy it. No, too expensive.
So hot takes. What do I mean by hot takes? I don't know.
Do we have hot takes?
Do we have any hot takes? I know I put a hot take up earlier where I think that the James Bond film A View to a Kill is better than No Time to Die.
Oh, I do like A View to a Kill, and I did like No Time. I'm a big Bond fan. I'm admittedly a huge Bond fan, so I wouldn't hate. I don't hate that take. I don't like. I think that View to a Kill is a fantastic movie.
It's a fun film.
Yeah, it's a great film to watch. It's really, really good. And like I would say that I don't know that there is a Roger Moore Bond movie that I didn't like. I think I liked them all, every single one of them. Now, okay, so I'm going to put it to you, since you're a Bond guy. Rank your Bonds from least Bondy to most Bondy, or the best Bond to the worst Bond, however you want to do it.
It's difficult because, Daniel Craig, I like him as Bond, but I don't think all of his films are good.
Okay. Which you're saying that the Bond films themselves were not good? So didn't like Skyfall, or didn't like Quantum of Solace, or
I thought Casino Royale was incredible. I thought that was a fantastic film.
That definitely top 3 of all Bond films that I ever. Yeah, really, really good.
Yep, I think that's up there. That might be there just after Goldfinger and From Russia with Love.
Yep, also both really, really good.
Which are my 2 favorite Bonds. Those 2.
Yeah. So, but you skirted the question. So you say that Daniel Craig, and you could do it based off of. Don't do it based off the film.
Okay.
Think about it like if you were thinking about Batman. Like this is a question that comics and I talk about this all the time. Like, who's the best Batman? And I think it's pretty common that everyone talks about it. I think, but Bond is another one of those you could say, okay, who do you have, right? And you got to take what was the one guy, I always forget his name. He was like Willoughby, some George something or other. What the hell? George
Lazenby. Yep, on Her Majesty's Secret Service. I like that film.
That was a good film. But him as a Bond, okay. He's like,
he wasn't given a chance. Here we go. I'm going to give you another hot take. I think Timothy Dalton, if he'd been allowed to do more than the 2 films, because the 2 that he did, I think he would be number 2 after Connery.
Ooh, yeah. You know what? I liked Timothy Dalton as Bond. I thought it was really good. He didn't have enough movies. He only had 2, right? It was just 2.
Yep. Yeah, he just did the 2.
Then he went to Pierce, and it was Pierce Brosnan after him. It was Timothy Dalton, then Pierce Brosnan, right?
Yep. It's tricky because I might go Connery, Dalton, Roger Moore, and then we're going into the tricky bits then, aren't we? Because then if I go Roger Moore, I'm stuck between Pierce and Daniel, and then George is at the bottom, even though I do love that one film. And I don't know which order to put Daniel and Pierce. Yeah,
that's a tough one. I'm probably fairly aligned with you. I don't know if I would put Dalton 2. I do like him. But Sean Connery by far is numero uno. He's the original. He's the best. I'd probably go second, Roger Moore.
Okay.
Then I really did like Daniel Craig. I would say Daniel Craig, Timothy Dalton, Pierce Brosnan, and then George Lazenby.
Yep. Yeah. That's a good shout.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know how hot of a take that is, but I gave you the best that I had for at least for the Bond conversation.
The problem they've got with Daniel Craig is that, and I've said this before, is that to other people, is that Daniel Craig had got fed up with it after 2 or 3 films.
Mm-hmm.
And in a sense, they might have been better to actually have just let him go, in a sense, and gone for another Bond in a way, because it's almost like he didn't want to really be there after the 3rd film.
Right. Yeah. If you're not going to be like committed to the character and be as good as you can be in the character, and part of that too, I think, has to do with the writing, right? So if the writing is not great, then you're probably not going to have a good time, no matter what. It's not going to be good. But I think the stories for the most part with Daniel Craig's were I mean, the first one was awesome.
Yeah.
The second one, is a bridge story. Spectre, I thought, like, introducing Christoph Waltz as Blazinski, whatever was his last name.
They should have just admitted from the beginning that he was Blofeld and not done all this pretend. I'm not, I'm this person. And then all of a sudden at the end, they call him Blofeld. And it's like, okay, you could have just done that from the beginning.
Yeah, like that was supposed to be the big reveal for you.
Yeah.
Was that, I mean, like, and I do like, and Christoph Waltz as an actor, I think he's fantastic. So,
yes. Yep.
It's interesting because I think that, they revisit that at all. And I think they did, right? In No Time to Die. I only watched it once. So Blofeld, he comes back. So.
Yeah, because he goes to visit him, doesn't he?
Yes, he does.
In prison or wherever he is. Yeah.
So now, but I think this Bond is, spoiler alert, not going to be around anymore. So who's next?
Yeah, I've not got a clue.
Yeah,
Don't
I don't
know.
know. We'll see. Only time will tell.
Maybe they could do a spin-off.
Oh Lord. Oh, great. Moneypenny, the series. No, I don't want to see.
It'll be that girl that became 007.
Yeah, well, again, they could go that route. They could go the route of trying to like really turn it on its ear or something like that. I heard for a period of time Idris Elba was being looked at as a Bond, which I think he would be really good. I think, yeah, you could do it. Like again, you can those stories. I think you can mess with because there's so many. I think that there's enough source material that you could really, put together a interesting, compelling character that is completely different from the other Bonds, but still very Bond.
Yeah, I mean, there's a good quote for that, which I saw a video clip of Sean Connery, and he was speaking about Bond, and he was saying how he was completely honest, and he said, look, he says, I'll be honest, he says, I've only read 1.5 of the books, and he said because he found that the lack of humor in the books and it's straight lacedness throughout the entire book. I mean, I've read 4 or 5 of the books, and I can see where he comes from. And he said that to him, the films are more interesting because you have got that espionage and the whole spy thing going on that's in the books a lot. But he said you've also got humor in the films that's not in the book. So to him, that's what attracted him with the films, was the little bits of humor that were thrown in there.
And I agree with that. I like the idea. Like, and again, if the source material is got to be palatable for a wider audience. So if it's just a straight spy thriller, that's going to meet a very
niche audience. Yeah,
but having a character like Bond where you can really kind of play with the different aspects of his character, his womanizing, his kind of like devil may care attitude all the time, like no regard for himself ever, his incredible ability to pretty much do anything, like his awesome vehicles, his messing with Q, like those are all things that I don't know like is necessarily translatable from the book. I think that was added as seasoning so that you can make a more universally palatable to a wider audience.
Yeah. I mean, there's a character that Q is based on in the books. Major Boothroyd, he's in the books. But Q as in Q is not in the books as such. But then again, I mean, I said to somebody who does a James Bond podcast, and we were chatting, and he said something about, he put up this like fan done pick poster of this film, and he says, in a few years we do like this, and it said license renewed or something. And that's a title from a James Bond book by another author that's not Ian Fleming. And I said to him, I said, well, really? I said, I don't see why they can't go to source material like that has a more filled out character of James Bond, and then look to that, in essence, look to those books for source ideas. I mean, it's a bit like the Marvel universe, because none of the films are exactly like the comics were that they are named after.
No, I'm a big comic book guy too, and like you definitely know the difference. Like there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot they got right, but there's a lot that they really didn't, like character wise. That's why some of the people that are like die-hard comic book fans look at those movies and they're like, I like them, but I don't love them because they didn't, it's just even calling the Infinity Stones not the Infinity Gems is a problem in the comic book community. You know what I mean? Like that's a problem. That was a decision made by the studio to make that adjustment. And, it to a degree, they don't realize that, again, albeit a smaller portion of the entire audience that goes to see those movies, because I'd say 90% of those people are not huge comic book fans.
Yeah.
You're alienating that 10% that's like the diehards that are like, oh, if you would have just done this a little bit different, I'd been so much happier.
Yeah. But well, that's the industry, isn't it? Disney, and you can understand it. They're wanting to make money, so they will go more towards the 90%.
Listen, one thing that I have learned from doing comedy and doing it in front. So comedy comparative with music is very different. Because in music, you are in a collective group of people, unless you're doing an acoustic gig and it's just you. Most of the time you're with your band. So, and you're playing music, you're singing songs. People may be familiar to people, may not, depending on whether you're doing covers or you're doing your own stuff. But it's a different animal than going up there and telling jokes and just being you. It's a very naked experience. One of the things that's interesting though is because I write every day. Like it's just one of those things I'm super committed to getting better at being funny on stage, and having material is really how you get there, and then cultivating that material is how you get better at it. But there's often times where like you write down a joke and you tell the joke, and the joke in your head feels hilarious. But when you get on stage, boy, does the crowd not like it. It's just, it doesn't work. And that varies too. Like when you go from place to place, if I'm doing, tonight's a great example. Before I got to do this interview, I was doing stand-up, and material I did literally last night that killed, got nothing tonight. So it was just like, and you just don't know. It's a lot of it has to do with the people that are listening to you. And the crowd, when you're in a room full of comedians, it's always hardest to make them laugh. And it was mostly comedians tonight, which I understood. And most of those comedians already heard it yesterday. So it's probably why they weren't like busting a gut. But that's what it is. It's like you have to like think about, and similar to that corollary with like things like Marvel or Bond or whatever kind of entertainment, where you've got source material that it came from, that was born from, where you're saying this is what it should be. If you're a huge uber fan of that, I remember perfect example of that. I don't know if you know, if you're a fan of Stephen King. Okay. But Stephen King did a series of books, probably 9 of them, I think, called The Dark Tower. Yeah. And everybody and their brother has been trying to take this set of books and make it into a series of movies, whatever. They've been for years trying to figure out how to nail it. And for someone who has not only read those books once, but maybe 5 or 6 times, because I love them so much, that's how good the story is and how much I love the way that it was written. I almost don't want them to try. They tried it one time with that movie with Idris Elba, who an actor I really respect and like, and it just didn't work at all. It just failed miserably. They just could not have gotten it more wrong.
Yeah. But then again, I mean, there's a lot of famous instances of Stephen King not liking screen adaptations of his books.
This is a true statement. And generally speaking, when Stephen King is involved in the film of his books, they're often bad. Like The Shining that was done by Kubrick is maybe one of the best films ever, but also infinitely better than when Stephen King tried to redo it like 20 years later, 30 years later. Yeah. His version of it was like very true to the material, because like the idea of of Jack having the croquet mallet, like that was a big part of that. And like how Jack actually ended up dying in the book is way different than how he ended up dying in the film that Kubrick did. It's actually completely different. It was a boiler explosion in the book, and it was him freezing to death in the movie. Totally different. But again, sometimes it's taking the source material and making it something, especially somebody who's not like married to it so much, like a Stephen King would be, or a uber fan of that particular material. It's a little bit easier to be able to let go and say, I just, on its own merit, I can watch this movie, The Shining, and be terrified by it and think it's great.
Yep. But I mean, in a sense, that's why when they did the film with Ewan McGregor, was it Doctor Sleep? Doctor Sleep. Yep. They had to do an almost crossover, so they had to take, and they had to say, didn't they? I think they had to say to Stephen King, look, because people will go to the Stanley Kubrick, we've got to make some sort of link to that film, essentially. Yeah. And he had to give into that and sort of say, yeah, okay, then we'll try and do sort of like a meeting of the two. So what was in the book, what's in Doctor Sleep that works for me, and marry it to the Stanley Kubrick. So they had to make because the book's Doctor Sleep, that is based on as a follow-on to The Shining. Oh, I've read it. It's follow-on to the book. So therefore, the way that Doctor Sleep works in the film is different to how it works in the book, because they're both from different sources.
Right. But you have to, but people who are saying like, okay, this is the sequel to The Shining, there's only one thing that comes to mind, and that's the Kubrick version of it, not his.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to be true to that material, or it's really not going to work because they'd be like, well, wait, the backstory here has changed and it can't. Like the backstory is the backstory. If we're continuing the story, it's canon. You have to let that stand on its own and continue on with it for the most part. And I think that the good thing is that because the story in Doctor Sleep is so much different than The Shining, like it's the continuation of Danny and his life, and what happens and how he gets involved in some more, we'll call it supernatural shenanigans. But it's a really, the book was great. The movie, I really liked the way they did it. I thought it was really well done. Ewan McGregor was awesome. Really good villain, like all good stuff. Loved it.
Hi, I'm Bob Jeffy from the Daily Dad Jokes podcast. You're listening to Pods Like Us. By the way, do you know where whales and dolphins get their news? From podcasts. Bye for now.
So what standout moments are there from your show then that you'd like people to possibly listen to? Almost like the best of the show for people to go back to.
Yeah, it's so many things that, and again, it's hard to be a super fan of the stuff that you do yourself, but there are things that, like Cinco de Mayo is definitely something. If you've not experienced Cinco de Mayo, not only because it's so super fan interactive, because that's really what we're doing it for, is so that the fans can compete against each other as much as he and I compete against each other. Yeah. It has prizes and stuff like that. And it's always so funny because we're just talking about literally the worst things of a time period, music and movies and TV and fads, and basically creating where it was born was through Missing March Madness, which is a college basketball tournament that happens over here in the States, if you know about it.
Yep.
And there's these brackets of these different teams that are competing against each other. So I said, I want to do that with things that suck: movies, TV, music, fads. And then, so go back and watch some Cinco de Mayos, because those are always funny. Because we just are just basically ongoing. We go deep into the source material and like who created it and why they created it and how many episodes of this show was on, and like some music, like, hey, where are they now? Like, we'll do that kind of stuff to kind of give you some background around it. So that for sure. I'd say we talked about the one chip challenge earlier. That episode just so funny because of the amount of pain that you just see us being through the entire episode. Is a really good one. Again, some of my favorite episodes are the episodes where we've done some interviews. So we did DJ Bonix is one of my favorite ones with Wiz Khalifa's DJ, now Snoop Dogg's DJ.
Yep.
And Friend, he's a really good guy and very open about his experiences. I did like, we had Greg Stone, he's a comedian, with Anthony DeVito and Brendan Eyre. They had a podcast called the Rad Dude Podcast, which is now Friday Night Greg. It's just Greg Stone's, and that was one of my favorite episodes. Actually, I think that was the first, when we were getting onto Roku, it was the first one I chose to play on Roku because I loved it so much. And it's just because it was those comedians and Kevin and I just in just chaos, pure chaos, and it was just so freaking funny. I'm trying to think what else. So we did, there was a couple of times where the topic randomizer landed on, from the mouths of, it was the topic randomizer topic was called From the Mouths of Babes. And I had to interview my kids on the podcast. Those are very, very funny. So go back and listen to those. Those are rough because it's very, very, so think about, and this is that my kids are respectively now 12 and 16. This is when they were much, much younger. So if you've got nieces and nephews, imagine trying to get a 10-year-old or an 11-year-old to sit down and actually talk to you coherently for a period of time.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are things that kind of stick out to me. I mean, obviously every episode has its own funny, or the one, maybe one of my favorite breakdowns ever. There's actually something that we've taken, because we have pretty long podcasts. They're like an hour and a half usually. There's one so we take little clips of it. So if you want to go get a taste of one, Go look at on YouTube. It says it's called Headspace Elderly Persistence, and it is maybe one of the fun, because usually on breakdowns, at least from my perspective, I don't like Kevin to see it ahead of time. I want him to get it cold, and this one he got cold, and he was not expecting what he got. It is very, very funny. Elderly Persistence. Go check that one out too.
Brilliant. So, what advice would you give to people wanting to do their own podcast?
When we started it, I didn't know that it would get to the level that it did. I'm happy with where it is right now. Obviously, always wanted to be more than it is and continue to grow it. And but when we started, we had friends and family listening, right? And that's what's going to happen for you. I guarantee you. If you're going to start a podcast, it's going to be, unless you're doing something that's niche, which is like, hey, I'm going to do a reaction video to this or whatever. Like, yeah, you're going to get views, and if that's what you're looking for and seeking it, you're not doing it necessarily just to get like that. If that's the way that you want to express your creativity, cool. But again, it's a building process, and you have to be patient with it. It's not something that you just immediately get, thousands of viewers or listeners or something like that. It takes a long time, and you have to promote yourself. Giving out consistent material, keeping it fresh. Again, a lot of it has to do with the chemistry that you have with the people on it. If you're doing it with other people, or you're interviewing people, being prepared, I think is another part of it. And then really good production. Like, don't make it sound bad. Don't make it look bad. If it sounds or looks bad, then you're going to have a hard time getting people to want to watch it or see it or listen to it. So I think those, and again, be prepared. One of the things that, I've done it. Like, I've been on podcasts, I've been interviewed on podcasts where there's not been a lot of structure, where you just talk, and those are fine. Those are great. I could do them all day. I talk basically for a living in some way, shape, or form all the time. So I can do that, but have a plan. Don't just kind of go into it and expect things to happen and be like, all right, why is this not working? It's usually because you didn't think about what you were going to say, not necessarily write it down, but have at least a direction that you're going. And you can, but don't be overly rigid with it too, where you're so structured that it becomes scripted, unless, again, that's what the podcast is about. There are a lot of scripted podcasts out there that are like stories and stuff like that. So, there are literally billions of podcasts out there, billions.
Yeah, there are.
So,
like you said, this show has a background structure, as you've seen through the bullet list that I sent and I sent to everybody. But that allows for then knowing where you're going to. But if you go into other areas, I'm okay with that, because, it's just to make sure that you have a structure that you're going to follow. And if you go into any area that you're interested in, just go into that area and then just rein it back in at certain points to keep the flow going.
We've done it like 3 or 4 times just in the last half an hour, where we've been talking about Bond and we're talking about Stephen King and talking about movies and entertainment and guitars. Like, we've gone all over the map, but you go back to those things. It's facilitation. It's having an agenda. Essentially, it sounds like a business meeting, but to a degree it is. You're having a conversation with somebody. You have these things that I want to know about you, or I want to discuss with you. And if the wind blows us into a different direction for a little bit, it's okay, as long as we find them way back to the path. And I think that's sometimes where people get jammed up. And I've seen that happen, where people get frozen up on podcasts because they're really not prepared. And they are trying to figure out where to go next. So it's tough. So you just, again, make sure that if you're going to do it, I think that anything that you do, you should do with quality, and you have to love it too. If you put something out that you don't like, then probably shouldn't be doing whatever that is.
Yep. If you start to do a show and you don't feel it, just change the way that it is, because you've not got those listeners at the very beginning anyway. You've got that time to be able to build and make it into the show that suits you as a person and you like doing.
Absolutely. And and again, sometimes it's just some of those moments, those key moments where, you've got something, and being able to really, really ride that one home. I guess it was the second episode we ever did, and it was only when we were audio. We talked about, we were talking about catching our parents having sex, and we both have experience of this, right?
Yeah, I heard that one.
And it was was not well received by really my parents in particular. I think Kevin's parents were not as, they didn't care as much, but my parents were, my mom in particular was not happy that I told that story. And so we did this, the next episode we did, we had a plan to basically write apologies, but the twist in it is that they're not apologies at all. Like, so it starts off very, very matter, like, I feel really bad that I did this kind of thing. And we have this sad walking away music with the Incredible Hulk playing in the background as our music.
Perfect.
So we read these written through, like, we really wanted to make sure, like, made a big deal of it, made sense. You guys got to listen, make sure that you listen. We're going to apologize for what we did. We don't feel good about it. And it just again, makes a big fat left turn. And next thing you know, we're just talking about all the horrible things that we are going to disclose going forward. And so as bad as it was that I had disclosed these things to my mom about, me catching them having sex, which she obviously knew because she saw me catching them. It was the litany of things that I was just alluding to in the apology that I was going to talk about, like where in the house that I had sex, the kinds of drugs that we did on the back porch, like all these things that they just didn't know about. So imagine, like, you're sitting there, I'm going to get this really great apology, and it turns into the direct opposite of that. And I remember when we did that episode, I remember not talking to my mom for a while because she was really, really pissed after that. But I also remember when we sent that out to people and said, hey, take a listen to this, they were like, that was really, really funny. What you guys did there was really, really funny. So that's when you know that you're on something, like, okay, got to keep on. It's kind of this track of, being really open and honest. That's the other thing too, being open and honest, being really upfront about who you are and why you do the things that you do, I think is important.
Absolutely. So what other podcasts do you like to listen to outside of your own?
God, I listen to so many. And I started getting into some of the podcasts on Roku. I've listened to your podcast. I've listened to, I listened to some of the other, like, standard ones that, a lot of people listen to, I guess, like, obviously a big fan of comedy. So I listen to a lot of comedy podcasts, like Matt and Shane's Secret podcast is really great. Joe Rogan's awesome, especially if you've got a lot of time to kill. It's like 3 hours long of content, which is pretty great. I'm a big fan of the Legion of Skanks. They're very funny, and again, unapologetically skanky. That's what they do. They're just, and again, I grew up on New York comedy, love New York comics. I'm going to be performing in New York in the near future. So like that, and that's a dream of mine. Like, it's one of those, like, this is my stand-up goals. Here's one of them. I want to go go play in, do spots in the city. How cool would that be? So Legion of Skanks have always been, like, those guys have been really, really funny. I like Your Mom's House. I like Two Bears, One Cave. I like Burtcast. A lot of comedy podcasts. I listen to a lot of that kind of stuff. And again, like, I'm just starting to get into some of the other podcasts. There's a true crime podcast called Reverie. I really like.
Yep.
Yeah, there's. Listen, I am a consumer, a huge consumer of podcasts. I listen to them all day, every day. And I got Sirius XM too, so I'll catch some stuff on that too.
Reverie is a really good crime show, and really good production quality on that as well.
She's fantastic. She's great. Like, that's one that I really dig. God, I feel like you're asking me to, like, list all my favorite people in the world. There's too many to name. Like, Florida Man on Florida Men, or Florida Men on Florida Man's a really good one if you've never heard that one. Fiddly Dickings, very funny, very silly. There's just things that I'm just kind of thinking off the top of my head. There's so many, like, and that's the brilliant thing about podcasts is, like, those all the ones that I just kind of like rattled off are all very different in their own way. There's some themes to them. Some of them are very funny in comedy. Like, there's some very straight up interview type things. There's the true crime ones that are really, really interesting. And again, well done, pages well researched. So, like, really appreciate that, but they all bring something a little bit different, and that's, again, going back to what you said, like, if you're going to create a podcast, stand out. Like, you want to, unless you're doing it, if you're just doing it for you, which you should be doing it for you, but if you're just doing it for you and you don't want to, like, make it something, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
But if you're doing something and you're saying, hey, I want to be able to stick out, because you remember you're one in a billion, billions. How are you going to get out there? And the fact that you have made it to as far as you have is super impressive, and you should be proud of what you've accomplished. That's incredible.
Thank you. But I mean, you were, I mean, I didn't mention it earlier on, and I meant to, but when you were both saying earlier on that there's things that you do in your show that other people do in their shows, the difference there is, it's you two that make the show, that give it that something different that those other shows don't have, essentially, which is where we're going in a way, is because if you put yourself out there and you're honest with who you are in these shows, that is what will bring people to stay with the show. Essentially, you as a person and what you portray is what pulls people in. Otherwise, like we've said, there are millions and billions of podcasts out there. If there's one that you don't like, there's one that's very similar that you might like, and it's your own personality that initially pulls people in.
And that's what you hope is and again, if you're doing it because you're, and you meant great point, like, hey, look, it's very difficult to come up with what you would consider to be like crazy original ideas. It's difficult to get that lightning in about figure out one thing out that no one ever did before. A lot of things, if not everything, most things have been done. How do you put your spin on it? How do you make it yours? And I think that's what we tend to do well. And it has to do 100% with just he and I being able to talk the way that we are able to talk, Yeah,
absolutely.
That comfort level.
Anyway, thanks for speaking with me today, Chris.
Marv, thank you so much. Thank you for staying up late, and I appreciate you, and hope to talk to you again soon. Thank you.
You will. Anyway, where can people find you then, Chris, and get hold of you?
Oh, yes, sir. Right. So you can go to Roku on the Pod Nation TV, and we are on 7 to 8:30 on Thursdays and Fridays. So check us out there. You can check us out on Twitter at Digging. Unfortunately, it's not Digging in the Dome because I think it's too long. It's just Digging Dome. Everywhere else, it's Digging in the Dome. Instagram, Facebook, on YouTube, it's Digging in the Dome channel. You can go find us there, subscribe, like it, do all that stuff. We're literally everywhere. You can't not find it. If you put Digging in the Dome in a Google search, you're going to find a lot of stuff, including our website. So go check us out there, and come check us out on Roku, obviously, primarily. We want to keep pumping that thing up.
While we're at it, because I keep forgetting about that, and thank you for reminding me. Pods Like Us, if anyone wants to go to Roku, you can do exactly the same. Go to look at Pod Nation, and we are on a Sunday, but I can't for the life of me remember what time it's on Eastern or PST, because I'm in the UK and I can't remember the times over there.
That's okay.
Sorry.
Just go and find it. It'll be there. Just go watch and listen to all the stuff that's on the Pod Nation television. It's really cool to be part of something that's just building up now. And I feel like the talent that we've got on that channel, including yourself, is really, really solid. I'm very excited to be part of the family there. And, that's going to be, I think, big for us as a collective unit, and keep on growing that thing. And so keep on watching, folks.
Absolutely. Anyway, you can also find Pods Like Us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I won't call it X, and Threads. Oh, and we're on TikTok as well. We put some videos up occasionally.
Yeah, we're on TikTok too, at Digging in the Dome on TikTok. So if you go there, the great thing is not only will you get some of our wonderful clips from the show, you also get a little bit of my stand-up in there. So you can go take a look at that.
Okay. Anyway, thank you everyone for listening, and hope you listen again to another episode of Pods Like Us.